Hi everyone, I'm Vladimir de Turckheim. I work as a lead Node.js engineer at Screen. We basically do application security management, so if you've got applications in prod, you might want to talk to me. But I'm also a Node.js collaborator and a member of the Node.js security working group. You can follow me on Twitter or GitHub, but that's details. So it's my first State of Node.js security talk ever. So I guess it won't be about what happened last year only, but what I think about Node security and the state of the ecosystem as of today. And we'll start with the boring part because it's about process, and if you worked in security, you know it's a lot about process, paperwork, and things like that. I promise there won't be too many slides on this. So, as you all know, there is the OpenJS Foundation that handles everything linked to Node.js, and there is a technical steering committee with a few members of which are at the conference today, which is responsible for handling the Node.js project. The TSC chartered a security working group, a specific working group to handle topics linked to security. So this working group is responsible for managing policies and process for Node.js core and Node.js ecosystem. It also maintains a vulnerability database and provides evangelism and assistance to the whole Node.js and JavaScript ecosystem at large. What does that mean? That means like if you find a security issue in Node.js directly, we can give you money out of it. If you don't, tweet it directly, you go on the HackerOne project. We have to thank HackerOne who gives us for free. And if that's a real vulnerability, please don't report linting errors in the test of libuv that happened. That's not a real vulnerability. If you have a real vulnerability in Node.js, you might be eligible to get money out of it. And there will be a security team that will fix the issue in a private fork and prepare the release for Node.js. So you probably remember that from time to time, we tweet there will be a Node.js security release on that day at that time. And that's what happens. There's a private fork where the issue is fixed. And at one point, we announced we will release. We put an embargo on continuous integration for Node.js because it's public and we don't want people to know about the vulnerability before it's published. And then we publish the patched binaries and reveal the vulnerability to the whole world, and we expect everyone to update immediately, which never happens. And there's a second bug bounty program that is much wider, that is anything on NPM. So if you find something that's a real vulnerability in a package on NPM, feel free to report it, don't tweet it, don't open a public issue directly, because it will be public. So what we do is we handle that through a private mean. We don't distribute money for that yet, but it happened that some vendors decided to grant money for that, and some sponsors like Coinbase just granted us money for that. We are still figuring out what will be the rules for giving bounties. I'm sure that if you find an issue in Express directly, it will reward you more money than in obscure package downloaded only by one people a year. So we've got this program, and we've got a public repo of vulnerability named Security Advisories, where everything we know about security vulnerabilities in Node.js core or ecosystem is available in JSON format. And it's fully open source under MIT license, just build whatever you want. And we assist maintainers in making their code safer when there is a vulnerability. And that's it for the boring parts. Let's go to cooler things. So this part is mostly opinions. And I started my career as a Node.js developer, and I get this quote a lot. As a Java developer, and I get this quote a lot. Sorry, I mix Java and JavaScript all the time. Aren't they the same? So I love Node.js, and I work full-time on Node.js, and I spend my spare time working on Node.js security. I'm one of these people who do Node.js security for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But it's just another runtime. I mean, what does it do? It runs your code and provides you with API to access the system. And I'm sure the previous talk was much more interesting on that specific part than mine. So it's just a runtime. Coding it insecure or secure does not really make sense. I mean, yeah, it's insecure, you can write the file system. It happened, I mean, some people can say that. Yeah, I mean, it's just because in your bloated Java or PHP application, there are so many layers that you forgot that you could write the file system from your application. It's just some code. And of course, it has vulnerabilities. Like any piece of software, it has bugs, and the vulnerability is just a bug, logical or technical, that could be exploited to get malicious outcome. And it has been having a lot of vulnerabilities lately. Like in 2017, almost 20 vulnerabilities have been reported for Node.js core. Cool. That means we are healthy. We embrace our vulnerabilities. Also, I'm a mean person. That's the number of vulnerabilities on the same time frame for Java and PHP. So it's a bit biased because the standard library of Java and PHP like makes coffee, literally. And it does everything. So the Node.js core is way smaller than Java JDK. That's why it's more likely to have less vulnerabilities. There is less attack surface on it. But don't let anyone telling you that JavaScript is that Node.js is insecure. It doesn't mean anything, especially compared to other ecosystems. And some of these vulnerabilities, they will affect your production applications. Don't read that, it's just an example. Otherwise, you won't listen to me. So Nikita, who is the NoSQL security researcher and TSC member, I highly recommending following him on Twitter, found that there is another issue with buffer that let everyone knows about your memory. Like if you use buffer improperly in older version of Node or even in newer version of Node, there might be random chunks of the process memory that are used to initialize the buffer. When I say random chunk, is that you can find your source code in it, or maybe anything that is in the memory, including API keys or private keys for cryptography. So that's something that you might be having in production. But okay, that's a vulnerability. We mitigate it. And some other vulnerabilities, they can affect your daily life as developers. So we actually spent 1 or 2 hours in a room in Vancouver last year to decide what should we do with that one. In Node 6, when you use --debug, the debugger is listening on all interfaces, like not only for connection coming from localhost. Meaning that, so we had an exploitation scenario, an unlikely one. You are hacking around in a Starbucks, and you want to debug your Node process. You start your process with --debug, and someone at the exact same time is scanning the network, sees that the port 5858 is opened on your machine, knows that 5858 is likely to be Node debugger session, then they would just need to open Chrome, type Chrome --inspect, and they would be able to connect to your debugging Node.js instances, granting them execution right on your laptop. And actually, it's really bad when it happens, but it's extremely unlikely to happen. So that's why we bike-shaded a lot of time on whether that was a real vulnerability or not. But we decided that yes, so we assigned a CVE number for that, and we embraced it as a vulnerability because we are responsible. Node.js is just another runtime. None of this is definitive in Node.js. There have been memory leaking things in PHP, in Java, in Ruby, and Python. There have been debugging issues in other platforms. It's not, I won't say it's not a big deal. It's a big deal, but it happens, and that's every piece of software that is created that has vulnerabilities. Node.js web applications. So, who use Node.js to build web applications? Yeah, okay, it's a Node.js conference. When I do that to security conference, I guess less hands. So, it's just another web application, meaning everything we have learned with PHP, with Java, with Ruby on Rails, with Python, makes sense as web attacks against your Node.js application, including SQL injections. And since I will always talk about SQL injections, because there will always be one developer somewhere doing that, I will always have a slide about SQL injections in my presentations, and I will explain it in details. So, on line 1, we are defining a new controller, a get endpoint on /post/id, with id being a dynamic parameter. On line 2, we create a SQL query that is select star from items where id equals, and then we concatenate the string we got out of the HTTP request. We send that to the database, and we expect a result. If the ID is the integer 1, the SQL query becomes select star from items where ID equals 1. And the outcome of that would be the document which has an ID filled with the value 1 if it exists. And I hope ID is a primary key in your table, otherwise I don't want to talk to you and I don't want to live on that planet anymore. And it's exploitable. Like you just need to replace the 1 by 1 or true. And the SQL queries become select star from items where ID equals 1 or true, meaning all the freaking items in that table. That's a memory, that's a data leak, and that's pretty much what killed the last thing remaining from Yahoo 2 years ago. Losing data is not acceptable, especially in a post-GDPR world. And that's exploitable. Just quick question, how do you mitigate this risk? Prepare statements, I heard it. Just check prepared statements. And now, let's be a bit wider. We use MongoDB. Okay, I don't, but you do. And so let's do a NoSQL injection with MongoDB. In that situation, we've got a post endpoint on /document/find. It works with get endpoints with QS. And on line 2, we create an object we call query. On line 3, if there is a title in the body, we put that in query. On line 4, if there is a desired type in the body, we put that in query. And then we throw that at Mongoose and expect a result. If react.body is just the JSON desired string, desired type blog, the MongoDB query will be document.find type blog with the string blog. And that means the outcome of this will be only the document in the collection documents which have a field type that is exactly equal to the string blog. All right. But in this setup, nothing prevents anyone from having an object instead of a string. There is no data validation. And if react.body is desired type and then a sub-object with $NE not equals to, and then the integer 0 or anything, the MongoDB query becomes document.find type not 0. And as we can expect the developer to have only strings for this part of this collection, of their collection, this outcome will be likely to be all the documents in the collection. And that's actually the equivalent of what we just did in SQL in the previous slides. And I know so many people who have this kind of behavior in production where they let the front-end application create Mongo queries and pass them directly. There's even an open source project which used to be owned by a big company that does that as a business logic main point. So it's not acceptable in the 21st century. So I heard that the previous talk talked about OWASP top 10. Go check the OWASP top 10. The OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project, meaning for the last 20 years, there have been people who said, hey, security is not only about operating system and networks. And if you have a background in security, not programming security, you would know that these people, they only care about the fame of breaking Windows or breaking a protocol. But then some people said, hey, it's not just that. There's more money on business logic, on applications. So they created the OWASP, Open Web Application Security Project. And this non-profit, it's just an open source organization, published what they call the top 10 threats against web applications. The last version was published last year. I highly recommend you know that. It's important. And now let's get a bit naughty. Okay, don't laugh to my pun. I don't deserve that. What about more Node.js things? regex DOS. Why do they work? Why are they bad? Why should we fear them with all our heart as JavaScript people? Because Node.js is single-threaded, there can be only one piece of synchronous code running at once. And don't talk to me about worker thread. I wrote this presentation way before they were in Node. And a very slow regex could take virtually infinite time to run, meaning that your application would not be doing anything else while it's computing the regex. So let's see how bad it is. On the left-hand side, we've got just on line 1 a regex It's a simple one, like anyone could write. And then we've got on second line a string created. And the logic around after that is just to append A's at the left-hand side of the string. You don't need an NPM package to do that. You can do that yourself. And you just write A's at the left-hand side of the string. And you compute the time you need to compute the regex. If you've got one character in the regex, just an exclamation mark, it takes quarter of a millisecond, probably V8 warming up. If you have 5 A's, it takes way below 1 millisecond, totally fair. 10 A's, okay, still acceptable time. 0.026 milliseconds is very small. But then, if you go to 15 A's, you're already up to 1 second to compute this single regex for a 21 character string. So I let you imagine how bad is it after that. For 20 A's, you've got 28 milliseconds. For 25 A's, up to 1 second. And for 30 A's, you've got 28 seconds. And the graph does not mean anything because it's so exponential, it grows so fast that it doesn't mean anything to plot that. I should have used the log scale. And I let you imagine how bad it gets after that. And the worst is, it's not always malicious. I mean, I know some people who call me and they're like, Vlad, I think we've got something blocking the event loop in our app. I don't really know. I'm like, what is your app doing? Oh, we handle text. Okay, there's a regex blocking somewhere. They dig, there was a regex blocking somewhere. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Because what's interesting in that case is that you've got one issue in your code, a slow regex. But at the same time, it can be weaponized against you to obtain a denial of service in your app. It's both parts. It's at the same time a bug in your code, but that could be exploited maliciously to harm your business. Let's talk a bit of ecosystem. So I updated the slides yesterday, and you will see why. Ecosystem attack. I'm not sure it has been said already, but we just hit the 1 million packages on NPM. I don't know if you heard, it was just all over the internet for the whole week. And yesterday, NPM published a blog post about something that happened in March. So someone in March published a package named Election Native Notify. That seemed to be a handy package for people building Electron apps. Okay, cool. And when version 1.5 was published, Komodo platform in their desktop applications are a crypto trading platform, crypto asset management platform for Bitcoins and things like that. They installed the package in their apps. They were like, hey, this is a handy package, let's use that. And in the next version after this move, the author of the package did not get compromised. The author introduced a malware into it, stealing cryptocurrency from users in that exact setup. And that happens. Who here loves Webpack? I love Webpack. But when you install Webpack, you've got 336 packages more in addition to from Webpack that are executed on your machine. Maybe, I don't know how much they are executed, but they have a lot of dependencies. And sure, some of those people building these dependencies we know. I mean, there's Isaac, there's Kat, there's Fedor. I mean, people we know, but some of them we don't know who they are. Can we trust them? Matter, I see you looking for yourself here. Here is Choker. And okay, so all these people virtually can run code on your machine, except, of course, if you read all the code of Webpack and its dependencies. I do that for breakfast when I'm bored. What I want you to take out of that is not being paranoid. It's just thinking that there are malicious modules in the ecosystem that are waiting to take advantage of your production. There are people actively waiting for their module to hit a production to steal things. I'm not sure it exists already, and maybe I will give you ideas. Just build a module really handy, a util, something like under Lodash, but that if run in an AWS Lambda, steals the AWS token that is pre-provisioned. Just do it. That's totally doable, and nobody will audit your code. And there are vulnerable modules that are putting your applications at risk. But that, it's a mistake. I mean, everyone makes mistake. Who writes bug? I write bug every day. Okay. Some of you don't write code, or some of you are not honest. And as I said before, bugs, security vulnerabilities are just bugs that can be used maliciously against you. So be kind to each other. Don't point fingers at people who created a security vulnerability if they did not mean to. What is unresponsible is not caring about security and not taking actions to reduce your risk. Recently, the CIA published their new policy regarding security in IT, stating that you will be breached. There is no silver bullet, there is no silver protection. If someone wants to breach you, they will succeed. What you have to do is to make their work so hard that it is extremely time-consuming and expensive to breach you, so they give up, except if you have a lot of booty to protect. Prediction. That's a prediction I've been doing in these slides since January. More and more attacks will target developers' desktop. The Electron thing is not exactly this, but I want to talk about one of my favorite modules. I love it, I use it daily. ESLint. Who doesn't use ESLint? Who uses ESLint? Okay, no surprise. It's one of the most popular modules of the ecosystem, and who loves it? I do. I mean, it's great. When people start to push code on my repos, I can just say, no, I'm not the asshole, ESLint is. And it's downloaded up to 2 million times a year in 2018. That's massive. That's a great package. And July last year, someone compromised the NPM credentials of one of the maintainers of ESLint. And they published not a malicious version of ESLint, they published a malicious version of 2 packages upon which ESLint depended, still depends. Basically, this malicious part of the code, the post-install script was fetching a script from pastebin and execute it to collect the .npmrc file where your npm tokens here. If I can steal that, I can publish on your behalf and I can pull private repositories on your behalf. You know how it has been found? Because this payload was actually not really well written and it crashed at the install. So someone were like, hey, when I install an ESLint, something crashed while downloading something from pastebin. That's weird. But it's funny, but up to that day, I still don't know if we have been lucky because we were in front of a script kiddie who didn't know anything about Node, or if this person stole a lot of credentials, then updated the payload for us to discover it. And it prevents me from sleeping at night. What happened after that? NPM revoked all tokens at once. Blah. According to NPM team, 4.5k accounts might have been compromised, and they added an option to enforce 2FA for package publishing. So except if you're publishing from CI, where the flow is not well defined yet, you should be using 2FA when publishing. And Adam showed the statistics yesterday, I think 23% of the ecosystem, which is a lot, already of published package now use that. So great, we are moving in the right direction. Use 2FA everywhere. So this talk has been anxiogenious, makes you paranoid. I can get that, so here is for the nice part where I give you takeaways to make your life safer. Keep Node.js up to date. On Monday, first thing you should be doing will be, do we still have production with Node 6? That's a risk because it's out of maintenance now. And you should be planning to move to a newer version of Node. You should always know which version of Node you will have in production at one time. Review the use of critical core modules. There are these modules that should not be called with unsanitized user inputs. You must be sure that everything that gets into these modules has been sanitized if it comes from the user. Sanitize input, do data validation. So that's to prevent NoSQL injection, as I showed earlier. My personal favorite is Joy, not only because I'm a good friend to Nicolas Morel who handles that, but because I find it developers friendly. If you've got another favorite library for that, use it, but use something. Don't blindly trust all the inputs in your apps. Test your code base for bad regex. Jamie Davis has a tool written in Python that can scan your code base to find bad regex and help you mitigate the risk. Monitor your dependencies for known vulnerable issues. That's an easy one. And also monitor which version of Node you use, because it might have vulnerabilities even if it's on the LTS track. So make sure you check the data from the security working group database. They are free to use, and if you want to build open source tooling around that, I will be more than excited to promote it and help you do that. Also, feel free to join the security working group. We are very welcoming and we have a lot of work. So if you're interested in that, you can just show up in the repo or crash the meetings. We will be more than happy to have you. We even have a pretty big Slack. Monitor your dependency tree. On the right-hand side, request with dozens of dependencies. On the left-hand side, rec. That does basically the same thing with 2 dependencies and a limited number of maintainers. That is a good tool. The tool npm.anvaka is really great for that. I always use it when I add a new dependency in my project. Read the OWASP top 10. If you have web application, this is your best friend. I think they even wrote an OWASP top 10 for serverless only, if you're interested in that, and one for mobile applications. So read that, it's great read, and it will help you level up as a web developer. Self-promotion a bit. We have built a checklist, interactive or PDF, you can use to know how to secure your applications, and we consider that as the critical items you should check when you have productions. Thanks so much for your attention. The slides are already online. There's a QR code if you want them. I will pass them in the Slack of the conference in a couple minutes. Please follow me on Twitter. I'm trying to beat my CEO at the follower games. And thanks so much for your attention.